Sorry, y'all.
And I guess since I haven't heard from Mary all morning, well, Kristen's on here, so we can go ahead and get started. I know Mary was a part of the other one. She'll jump on when she's ready. So I don't really know how we want to start it off. I know Kristen gave us a lot of info before and people had questions. Did anyone have anything new, or Sue, if there's something hot on your mind that you want to start off with?
I just actually wanted to say hi, Kristen. I'm Michelle because we haven't met.
Hi, Michelle. It's nice to meet you.
You as well.
Sorry, I'm sitting in front of my window, and this is the first time where it's sunny and it's coming in at a weird angle, which is I'm more than happy to welcome the sun, and just it's a little interesting.
It's all good. Thanks for being willing to come and meet with us again.
Anytime. Do you want me to did you all get the link? Well, did you all get the slide deck that I sent to Andrea from the last meeting? Okay.
Yep, thank you. And thanks for passing that on, Andrea. I had a question. I had a couple questions come up, and Michelle, it was in relation, I think you said, or Mary, no, it was something, it was Mary, the email that Mary sent. Hold on, I'll find it.
Yeah, it was Mary.
Yeah. Okay. Because it was about a bill that was before the legislature, and it had some things it was addressing that then made me think, oh, maybe we didn't ask all the questions that we should have asked. But also I could see where the answer to all of them is like, oh, you're just a full district going for it, so that doesn't affect you. But I wanted to check with you, Kristen, to make sure that.
Do you know what bill it was or what it was about?
I'm looking for it right now. If anybody else finds it before me, let me know. Education House Bill 3444.
That's the one about the funding pass-through. That is so a lot of charter schools in the state of Oregon, they negotiate their funding, right? The pass-through. And so at minimum, the law says at minimum they have to receive 80%. So a lot of charter schools sit at 80%, sometimes they negotiate with their sponsoring districts a little bit more, like 85, some are at 90, but it's not even all the way through. And so that bill was aiming to bump the minimum pass-through from 80 up to 95. So that bill is didn't receive a work session, so it's kind of not moving forward at this point.
Right.
And that's to that extra either 5% or 20% is raised by the district through tuition, or how do schools come up with that?
So there's no tuition. It's the state school fund. So what normally happens is the state will release funds, a particular amount of funding based on the ADMW, based on the amount of students enrolled in the school. And charter schools that have sponsoring districts and single district charter schools, the district receives the funding and then passes it through to the charter school. So if you're a single district charter school, you can say we're passing 100% of the funding through to the charter school because you have one charter school. If you're a sponsoring district and you have several charter schools, you can say we're passing at minimum 80% based on our contracts with these other schools. And so so that's how that works. And the part that they retain, that extra 20%, is the district keeps and and uses it for administrative things because they still have to do special education services. It could be retained for transportation. It could be retained for a bunch of other administrative services for the school in managing the charter school. So
So the
that
funding,
baby was very cute.
so the funding, if we stay a single district school, our funding doesn't change at all.
No, it's based on your ADMW.
Okay.
Yeah, Kristen, that same email, the kind of checkpoints on it, and obviously it's written for kind of public consumption, but there's the 95%. The second one just says allowing public charter school students to access local, state, and federal education dollars available to other public schools. As a single district charter, were there any specifics that were being called out in that?
No, that was referring to virtual charter schools
That's
because
what I thought.
oftentimes virtual charter schools are not included in certain funding.
SIA. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have in-person school, and so you can still maintain your SIA if you have early literacy grants going on, and any of the other grants that you receive through the state will still be in play.
And then the third bullet point was enabling charter schools to offer transportation services and qualify for state reimbursement grants.
Yeah, and that relates to some rural charter schools like out in Eastern Oregon and some other parts of the states. They are located in districts that are quite rural, and their sponsoring district, their transportation services sometimes don't go all the way to where the school is. And so they were wanting to maybe, can we charter something? And so basically passing the funding, making sure that that funding is equitable all around for the transportation services. So you already have your transportation services locked in. So
and if you transport out of district into district, does it still qualify for the same level of reimbursement as everything else we already transport?
I think yours wouldn't change at all. Yeah.
Okay.
I think yours is the
Well,
same.
Okay, we don't currently transport from out of district. So like if we were a charter school and we wanted to transport from like a nearby, like out of district location, that's a good question, Sue. So it wouldn't change with what we have now, but if we wanted to add that, would that change?
You could, I'm not exactly sure how the transportation piece works. I know that sometimes charter schools have enrollment of students that come from out of district, but rarely does the sponsoring district go out of district to collect those students. They somehow make it into the district and then they're put on a bus line and then can come.
Okay, because we have a
That makes
neighboring
sense.
district. Yeah, we have a neighboring district that definitely is a single school charter district, and they do transport out of district.
They do.
said-
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you have a little bit more flexibility there, and you can like definitely work with your neighboring districts, especially if you're drawing students back and forth between them. Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds like it will still qualify at the same rate for reimbursement. But I'll ask Jaren to look into that and double check.
Yeah, that bill didn't pass through, so it's the current law still stand then with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't in on the first meeting, so I might be repeating, but I'm wondering about unions. Can we still have a teachers union if we're a charter school?
That's a really good question. Well, the charter school, are you having one board or are you going to have two boards?
I think we're thinking one.
One board.
Like-
Yeah. That's a really good question. Most charter schools don't have a union, but because you are a district school, I like you are a district, I believe you probably still can have your union.
Yeah.
I don't
Michelle,
think
I can speak to our local neighbors have associations
Okay,
that they bargain with. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I was reading about standardized or about schools, charter schools, is there's a focus on standardized testing. Why is that, and who makes that determination?
so. The standardized tests are for all public schools in the state of Oregon. So they do it used to be called Oaks, now it's the SBAC, I believe.
SBAC.
Smarter Balance.
OSAS in Oregon, but yes.
Yes, yeah, OSAS is like the thing. Yes, it goes through many acronyms over so many years, and that is statewide assessments. We are an opt-out state, so students do not. They can opt out. We obviously encourage the students to take the tests, um, but charter schools and likewise other public schools can also do other sorts of assessments throughout the school year as well to help gauge where the students are in their learning. Some students use iReady, some school districts use iReady or other internal assessment systems.
Mike,
But
I guess my question really is why are charter schools more reliant and focusing on standardized testing than traditional schools?
I'm not sure if they are. There's a wide variety of charter schools around the state, and some like are Waldorf or Montessori based, and they're like, we don't want to test at all. And other charter schools, it depends on what their focus is. Some are very like STEAM or STEM oriented, with science, technology, arts, and math, and they're very academic focused, and they test a lot. So I think being a charter school allows some flexibility depending on what type of school model you have to work within those confines. So,
Thank-
yeah. More people joining.
Maybe Mary.
Good
Looks like-
morning.
Yeah, Mary's on. Yeah.
I didn't have a ton more questions, so if anyone has more, feel free to jump out with them.
What's our process here, Andrea, once we have this conversation and we're just going to get back as a board and
Yeah, I think if everyone feels like they have whatever info for the time from Kristen, then it was going to be a good time for us to chat for once about what direction we think we'll go or how quickly. Or
Kristen,
I'm
do
always
you have-
available. You can always email me questions as they come up. I love to answer them. I can also resend Andrea the slide deck that might have more of the background information about what the presentation we did back in, what was it, January, I think. That has a lot of background information that you can review and look at.
From where you sit, Kristen, what are the cons of having going from a traditional school to a charter?
Especially as a single district charter.
A single district charter. I mean, I'm a charter school specialist. I really like charter schools. I might be a little biased towards charter schools, but I don't see too many cons. I think there's a lot of flexibility in being a single district charter school where you're only managing one school. I think it's challenging. It's more challenging for multi-district sponsors to manage variety of different charter schools. You're still going to have you still get to keep your board. You still get to have all of the funding. The ADM is you're used to all of the systems. You have all of the systems already built in and baked into your public school. So that's great. The extra thing would be you create like that little nonprofit part of it. That's the charter school part, you know. And in terms of like logistics, if you do become a single district charter school, you need to merge the school if needed, but I don't think you need to merge the school because you have one school essentially. And then you have to you get a new school ID number for the charter school.
And so we have to become a 501c3 to run a charter school?
Well, actually, I'm not sure if you have two boards, yes. If you keep your same board, I don't think you need to. Let me just check on that.
And then I have a two-part question. Since you're a charter school specialist, what are the pros? And can you put me in touch with someone who is on the other side of it. Since you are a charter school specialist and you love them, I'd like to talk to someone who has a different perspective. Can you put me in touch with someone like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can give you all the sides of it. I can definitely find somebody who has a different perspective. Are you looking for a single district specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can email Andrea some people that you can talk to, some other single district charter schools. I think if you talk to them specifically, they will have more firsthand experience for you on the ground
Mhm.
as to the pros and cons and what they're facing with like on a daily basis. And if they had any regrets turning into a single district charter school. Um, and what else was I going to say? What was your first question? Sorry, Michelle.
From your standpoint, what are the
Mhm.
pros? Why is this something we should be doing?
Oh, there's a lot of flexibility in charter school and having a
Right.
charter school. So you can really, depending on the scope and the scope of your program, you can really branch out into different ways, different modes of learning. You can be very creative with charter schools. Yeah. So, um, otherwise, I mean, it's fairly, I'm gonna look at this presentation that I had sent to you guys. I can send it to you again. Um, some flexibilities, you have open boundaries, your flexibility with transportation, your teacher qualifications. So if you have teachers, you have to have at least 50% of your teachers have teaching credentials, like state teaching license. But the other ones have to be registered through TSPC with the charter school license. So, I mean, that alone is amazing because, as you know, finding teachers is harder and harder these days. So that is a really great thing. You have some flexibilities with your curriculum, with receiving more money with grants. As a charter school, you might be eligible for some other funding streams, which is great. And let me just see. You still are, the accountability is still the same. You're still accountable to all of the laws and regulations with charter schools. ESSA, IDEA, civil rights laws, that's still in your purview. Um, and then the district is still responsible for administering any of that money that schools receive. Um, PERS, you still have PERS, which is great. You can remain organized if you have like if you have unions and organizations like that, you can still maintain those. That doesn't have to change at all. Um so you Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I mean, the hard work would be if you're rebranding yourselves. If you're rebranding yourselves and you're changing things significantly as a charter school, then that might be a hurdle for your community. Um, you know, get community feedback, work with your partners and your community members and students and staff and figure out as a board what direction you're going with all of that. Um, and then, I mean, that might be the challenging thing if you're like really radically changing a bunch of fundamental things about your school. That would be a hurdle. That would be a con, maybe. But you still need a lot of community input and approval and all that to go through with things. So it's still great. So you still do your audits, you still maintain your same practices as a board and your fiscal responsibilities. So that doesn't change. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to it. Um, I also don't know your community. So, engage your community as much as possible in your decision making and get their input. And yeah, they're great.
Sorry if you already said this,
Yeah.
but what was like and I know you did at the last meeting, but what like the teachers that you can hire when you're a charter, like what's their licensing, like what I don't remember what you said about that.
So out of your staff, 50% need to have the state teaching license.
Okay.
So they are like, you probably as a district school have 100% have a state license. But as a charter school, you have to have at least at minimum 50%, which gives you some flexibility. The other folks that you hire it's up to you who you are hiring. Make sure that they're qualified, make sure that they are fingerprinted, they have gone through background checks, you have all the safety and health things in place. And make sure they have the right background for teaching that you want them to have. They might be working towards a teaching license. They could be like folks in the field, like if you have a CTE program, right? Somebody that's coming in and teaching a skill, for example. And then there is TSPC, which is Teacher Standards and Practice Commission. There's a charter school registry in there. So those folks that do not have a teaching license need to be sponsored by your school to get a charter school registry. And it's about the staff person pays for it. And it's good for a few years, but the school district has to say why they believe that this person's a good fit and can be qualified to teach in your school. Maybe they
And
have-
so Sue's that person?
Pardon?
Sue is the sponsor?
The school district is the sponsor.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, for example, Montessori schools, some Montessori teachers have their state teaching license and they have their Montessori certification. And sometimes the Montessori certification is not recognized by the state. But so that gives flexibility for Montessori schools because they can hire teachers that have the Montessori certification, but not necessarily the state teaching license,
Mhm.
as long as 50% of the staff have the state teaching license. So, it depends on who you're hiring, what your goals are as a school. But I know nowadays it is more and more challenging to find teachers because not a whole lot of people are entering and exiting the teaching profession these days.
Mhm.
So that gives you a little bit of flexibility in who you're able to hire at a charter school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Oh, well, go ahead, Mizu, actually. Mine's a little tangential.
Mine too. You win. You go first.
Well, I was following progress on how HB 3444, and I know that there was just quite a bit like going on around that, and it had to do with funding, and like equal funding for charter schools. And so I was focused a lot on funding concerns around going charter, just because like my brain has just really been fixated on like grant funding being a little bit more limited with charter schools. And then with already knowing that there's a little bit less equality with funding with charter schools, and then this House bill going up, hopefully going up in front, and then it not happening. I don't know exactly know what my question is. I guess maybe my question is, like, what challenges are charter schools facing with funding? I mean, we have a lot of programs. We have a small school, so our funding is already just small compared to other larger districts. And so a lot of our funding, it gets creative with grants, and Sue and Kay are really good about finding money elsewhere. And so I get a little concerned if we go charter, if like some of those funding streams are, if they're already limited, if they're going to be more limited. And I don't know if you can speak to that at all, Kristen.
Yeah, you came a little bit late, but we had talked about that earlier, whereas with H-Bill 3444, it was basically bumping up the minimum amount that charter schools receive passed through their district. But as a single district charter school, you're receiving 100% of the amount. So you as a board can determine what you want to do, but normally single district charter schools, you only have one school that would be the charter, so they can receive all of that money. But other sponsoring districts have several schools and they have different contracts negotiated at different amounts. So the funding question is that I would say that that wouldn't really affect you as much because you are still receiving 100% of the funds per pupil, the ADM and the ADM funding for that. By all means, a lot of charter schools and non-charter schools do a lot of fundraising or seeking grants. And so I would encourage y'all to still do that. That's you're not limited to that. Um, I mean, being a charter school, you have a different angle, right? You can say, you know, this we're a charter school and this is our mission. And so when you're applying for grants, you can use that angle. Um, yeah. So I think it's beneficial. A lot of charter schools are, I mean, a lot of charter schools and public schools are just always looking for money. It's really hard.
Thank you. That's what I
Yeah, you're
get for
welcome.
being late.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you asked. It's a really important question because funding's huge. Yeah.
And mine was kind of along similar lines, Mary. We did talk about that House bill earlier, so that, but I at the same time was also, and this is another thing I had raised and talked about, but I was wondering, and I think Jaren might have been gonna check in on it, but how does does this affect our ability to raise money through bonds or levies long term, sort of like this long-term funding thing? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
no, your bond funding will not be affected by it at all. Because that was a question that you had asked back in
Yep.
January and I researched it.
Mhm.
All of the funding and cash flow goes through your district and is managed at the district level. So you can still apply for or seek bonds. You can still do all of that stuff. That's not affected at all. Um,
Okay.
so that's a really good thing.
Oh, it is. It is. Is it a new thing? Because I feel like our neighboring, like the neighboring district that I'm most familiar with, wasn't able to
They weren't
put.
allowed to seek bonds.
I it may be not true. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That is sort of just the rumor that I heard, but it wasn't. It was back when we were also pursuing a bond, and so either rules, I mean, rules could have changed, or maybe I misheard. So I
Yeah.
just, yeah, but I did
Yeah.
want to check on that for sure.
Yeah.
Not that we plan on doing that now, but even in 30 years, I don't want to make a move now that, restricts us 30 years down the road.
Well, you still have your district, right? So you're
Mhm.
still the district, and then it just so happens that your only school in your district is a charter school.
Right.
So you as a district can still seek bonds and anything you need that way in
Mhm.
order to support your school.
I think, okay. I think it had something to do with being able to, at least when I heard it at the time, being able to, because it was like, a school of choice, then people could, from out of district, could attend that school, but they weren't being subject, like the bond only applied to within the school district boundaries. And so like, I think there was some inequality with, people where, how that bond was applied. There was some concern about that. So
Yeah.
if it's not a concern anymore, or never was, that's great. I just wanted to make sure I explicitly, asked it.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, your bond funding's not affected by that.
Okay.
That's my understanding of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Mizu, I was just texting with a superintendent of a district with a what do we call these? Single district
Single district charter, yeah.
single district charter,
Uh-huh.
who says not impacted, you can still go for bond.
Yeah, cool. Very
Still
cool.
have all the powers and rights of a school district.
Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is
Thanks.
great.
Cool. No more questions for me.
All righty. I have to go to another meeting now, but it's really lovely talking with all of you. Michelle, I'll get some information to Andrea to send to you about it, to connect you with other single district charter schools, and you could talk to them about their pros and cons because they have more firsthand experience on the ground. That would be helpful to inform your decision making. And like always, I am always around, so you can always just ring me, email me. I'm more than happy to drop in on another meeting anytime you have questions, and help you through the process. So,
Thanks, Kristen.
yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
And hi, Macy.
And I think Abby and I are nervous if she figures out Nanny's on the screen here.
Yeah. Oh,
She figured it out.
I think she sees you.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so first
So
things
precious. Oh, she is
so
precious.
first, one thing we didn't get to figure out earlier was if Mary's going to go at 10, do we want to take a break? And you're available, what, at 10:30?
Yeah, my call's done at 10:30.
So we could
yeah,
just take a half-hour break, guys, and then just come back at 10:30 and do the eval part. Does everyone want to do that? That we just get all cohesively done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right,
Oh,
we'll do that then.
sweet.
So
Okay,
we are,
thank you.
you guys are free to chat then for now of thoughts on this or where we want to go.
So since I've been out of the loop, what's the temperature of the board? Are you feeling like this is the direction we're going without talking to districts who can tell us maybe why we shouldn't? I'm just wondering where you all are at.
I can start. I don't have a I'm at a information gathering phase. And so we had in that initial meeting, and I feel like had lots of information that was helpful. It was all from Kristen, and so it was, it was all from her perspective. I think it was very helpful to me to just learn some of what I think were presented well as facts, just sort of how the mechanical ways that single district charters can work, and that was really useful. I agree with you. I would love to talk to more schools that more people to just get their perspective and what's hard, and so that we at least can anticipate stuff like that in our conversation. But for me, I'm in a fact gathering phase. I am seriously, I do feel like taking the conversation really seriously about charter as an option or other options in order to make sure that we're doing everything we can to allow enrollment to be as robust as possible. That's really important to me. So whether it's charter or not, I think making sure that we're looking at enrollment as a board and seriously saying, are we doing, what can we do the best to support, a robust enrollment going forward for us is a priority for me for sure. So that's my 2 cents.
If it's not charter, what is it then? Like recruiting?
I mean, that's the only other option I've come up with. Basically,
Okay.
it's really, really being very vocal about how awesome we are and why we're so awesome. And yeah, but even so, I think that's still a very limited pool of people that we're, able to reach with that, because it's all in district and, so, but I still like that idea anyway, and we're doing some of that. And there's always more than you can do of that, which we've always known. And that's just it's hard to do it time-wise and stuff. But still, that was my I don't have another good option, which is why I've been pushing, let's have the charter conversation. So
Thanks. Is that kind of where everybody's at, that we're in a fact finding? Or do we have real proponents or opponents to the charter idea?
I mean, I guess I feel like I'm kind of past the fact finding of it. For me, and that's not everyone, I just think we make a decision of what we're going to do. And I don't know where Sue sits on it. I mean, because she said it was basically a seamless thing if we want to do. So I don't know if that's something people want to do this year, next year. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sue?
Yeah, I guess I'm good either way. I'm not totally sold on it, and I'm definitely not against it. I do think for the same exact reasons it's interesting for enrollment. And especially with the state of housing and I don't know the right word, but maybe family dynamics and mobility of students who live in the region but not in the district when things change with their families. I do think this could help us with transportation to help keep some of those kids stable and attending the same school where they can't get here right now. And that's probably for me the biggest sell. I did reach out to a couple of superintendents. One I've heard back from who are single district charters. I think there's a difference between charter schools and single district charters that's important to name. And so the single district charters, I really don't having worked at the ESD and supported two single district charters. There's very little, if any, felt difference between them and supporting a small rural district that's not a single district charter. The only difference was when Blatchley had two boards. That was different and I'll say hard. But both of the single district charters in our county have gone away from having two boards and have a single board, and both seem to recommend that. And we've already been talking that way. So that would be my one pushback is if we were saying, let's have a second board, I'd say, can we reconsider that? And then just what I sent out was any reason to definitely or definitely not become a single district charter school. And one response said the paperwork of consolidating your schools into one school on paper with ODE is a bit of work. If you ever want to start another charter, virtual or brick and mortar, you'd have to return your school to a traditional school. Probably not an issue for you, but definitely something to know. I believe your charter application and contract can be as simple as you want it. Ours was a bit more complex. We had to follow federal rules to apply for a couple grants. We had to have two boards for a while. We are now down to one board. So because they were going for a they explain a little later here. They had to follow federal charter. Hold on. It was a specific ODE charter planning and implementation grant that had to follow federal charter rules because the funds were from the Department of Education. And that's why they went through that whole process of having two boards. But I asked specifically, do you get federal grants now? And any state grants that you run into problems, or even local foundation grants that you found you weren't eligible for as a charter district? And they said they regularly get federal grants, no problem, and didn't say anything about not being eligible for foundation grants. So I think those were a lot of the concerns that I had, and that came up on the prior call. And I thought we landed with the right answers, but it's always good to hear it from somebody living in it that feels like we had the right answers.
Cool, that's helpful. Thanks for reaching out to other people.
My thing is, I'm not so much in the like fact-finding phase anymore. But what I don't want to do is like blindside our community. So I'm not in the just make a decision stage yet. Or like or if we did want to make a decision, I wouldn't want to just do that and then announce, like that would be so unfair. And then people would be like, wait, what? We're and if we just say, well, it's been on the agenda for months or something, like that's still not like very fair. So I don't know, like we'd have to like be, I don't know, I would just rather have it be more intentional and like transparent to the community, because this is a big decision that like I was in that camp of like, well, a lot of us were in the camp that just like we would never go. And like, so like people need to be given the chance to like also like be given the facts and the why and like that understanding if we do make that decision so that it doesn't just seem like it, anyway, things are just so polarized and people will just like a reason to be mad. So I just wouldn't want to make a decision and not give the community a chance to just kind of like find out that we're serious about it and that we want to do it. But for me personally, I'm very much leaning towards going there because I want whatever it takes to make Mapleton survive. And I when I'm presented with the options for enrollment or whatever, I feel like this is the one that makes the most sense. I mean, without or just staying keeping things the way they are. Like if we're going to make a big change, I think this would be the change that makes the most sense, personally. So that's what I have to say.
Totally agree with you, Mary, about needing to have a lot of community outreach phase before we go forward with any decision, because that might change the decision we make, what we hear.
One thing that came up on the last call that hasn't come up today, I was just remembering, is just the idea of uh, uh, innovation, for lack of a better word. Like the charter concept was rooted in innovation in schools and allowing for some different thinking and flexibility. And I think one of the things that came up is engaging, continuing to think about engaging homeschool families in connection with the school. And so I don't have specifics there, but it is something that starts to open up some allowance for connecting in innovative ways to members of our community who do homeschooling.
Some of the research that I've been digging into talks about the undermining of the public school system and with the charter school. And I don't know what our responsibility is to public school with the system, which is flawed in itself. But it's something that I'm trying to understand deeper. This is a piece of history. Back when Kyle Tucker was our superintendent, he and I think John Rolland, maybe, I can't remember who it was, went to a charter school in down by Drain, and maybe it was even Drain, I don't recall. But after we did all the investigating and the visiting and talking to the community, we decided not to. So this is a new time and I'm trying to have an open mind about it, but I just wanted to give you that we have been here in Mapleton and we decided no. So that's a piece of it. And I really do want to talk to people who might be able to give us kind of a 360 or a mile high view of why it's not a panacea. And not that I'm saying it is. Having someone like Kristen who's said it straight up, I'm a charter school person. I love it. It's great. So I just want to be kind of have my eyes open to why this might not be the right thing for us. Could very well be. And it seems like we're going in that direction as in right now in these times. So before we go there, I have to dig in deeper.
The I didn't do a lot of like formalized research, but um I did make a point to talk to like families and like coaches of like all the teams that my son played against when he was playing soccer, just because there were a lot of schools that he played against that were either private Christian schools, or and then charter schools, and then the smaller, the smaller public schools too. And now this was Stanislaus, so it was like 3A and 2A schools, and like a couple of 4A schools, but a lot of them were schools that had kind of had to make this decision. And like kind of the overwhelming response from parents was that it was like the best decision that they made to go charter, just because like it was kind of like that fledgling district feeling. So that was an interesting thing. The coaches didn't really feel either any way about it because they were kind of hired from outside, so it kind of they didn't really care, like if school's a school kind of thing, so it just didn't really matter. The kids didn't really say anything, so it was more, I mostly got information from the parents. And other parents, the ones that didn't really have a lot of information or have a lot of opinion, were parents that came to the school after it had become a charter school already. So it was just like a very informal, like little piece of information gathering. Also, some parents didn't want to talk to me if Sayusla slaughtered them. So I was like, sorry, maybe you don't want to talk to me about the function of your school right now. So anyway, but that I just a little tidbit. It seemed like there was a bit of like the why, the why behind was it was always about expansion of programs. So that was interesting. Like there was more opportunity, and there was always this there was a thing about community involvement, and that really like resonated with me. So more opportunity, like more programs, more opportunity, and more community involvement. They seemed like it was very localized, like it was always the best decision they'd ever made or something. So that was kind of important to me to hear.
Why is that? I mean, maybe Sue, you can address that. Why do you have more opportunity for expansion in a charter school? Because it seems to me like under your leadership, we are expanding as a public school. I don't know what that's about. You are muted, love.
That means you couldn't hear me say and have no thought. Now you can. In terms of expansion, I mean, I think some of it is just when you're small, right? Even if you think of enrollment as an opportunity, when you have even a handful more kids in a district our size, it helps, whether it's an athletic team or a funding for a program that there's been interest, like these two kids have been interested in it, but now you have 5 or 6 that you start to look at. So I think for a district our size, some of it's just about numbers. And I think that's who you see a lot of the single district charters. And then Mary, when you say expand, like you can, I feel like I try to think outside the box and find access to all those opportunities anyway. But I guess I just don't see this hurting opportunities. I don't know that I've thought about it in terms of expansion, but for example, I don't have a concrete idea about how to engage homeschool families if we're a charter, but I know that's not really on the table if we're not a charter. So maybe that's one way to look at a program expansion or opportunity expansion is like looking at a model that allows you to just think differently in connecting students who aren't already connected, that then allow some opportunities for kids who already are.
Yeah, I mean, these were sports and music families, right? So they were athletic parents, and then the parents of like the kids in the pep band. And so they were parents of kids who were doing extracurriculars. And so that, I mean, I'm filling a gap that I don't know because I'm making assumptions because I don't have the answers, but that could be, it could be something like that where, you know, this allowed for a pet band to come back, or this allowed for a soccer team to happen. There's not a lot of small schools that have soccer teams. And, I mean, you know that Vermilla can't play for Mapleton. So, so just, it could just, that expansion could just mean that, like, now we have a soccer team at our own school, or we have a pet band now, or we have whatever.
And
Has this
Michelle,
sparked-
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, this is a little bit different subject, but going back to the, like, you know, the role of charters in public education without going way far into it. I come from Arizona. It is a very different charter model in Arizona and other states, where I think you tend to hear that more. And so what Oregon does differently is that the districts have oversight of the charters that they sponsor, and so there's an accountability loop built in that really does make charter schools feel and I'll use the word behave, but be much more public school like than in where I come from in Arizona. And one of the things we faced in Arizona is like you'd have this exodus of kids kind of a month in that got recruited by local charter schools, and then come testing season, I don't know, March, April, there'd be a push out of kids back to the public school who weren't going to perform well on tests. And we'd get them all back. They'd test with us. We hadn't taught them all year. And you'd see that. And I mean, at some point it's a practice. And actually, I just read some news the other day that the particular one that was impactful to our district is closing and has major lawsuits and all the things right now. So 15, 20 years later, that's playing out. So, but that's just that's a place where accountability is very different. And the model of a public school is of a charter school is entirely different than the local public school. And there's no working together. And in Oregon, I have not experienced that at all. And in fact, while the charters many times operate separately, at the administrative level, there has to be partnership back and forth because they are the sponsoring agent. So I don't know if that helps explain that a little bit, but when you're reading those things, I think it's important to put that lens of what state is that being talked about, and how is Oregon the same or different. So.
Yeah, I'm actually, my Google search was about Oregon specifically.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but I'm still, I do have that big question about the undermining of public schools, and how do dollars that go to charters negatively impact, especially like big schools in less financially able communities. That's one of the things that I read about. And I know we're here in our little bubble, but I feel like I'm part of the world, and that I know I'm a school board member for Mapleton. That still affects the way I think. So, maybe I'll get some clarity on that. Also, I was wondering, do we have a focus, or are we talking about a focus of what our charter school would be, or do we have to do that in this case? Or do we just go on with our good selves and just?
Yes, I mean, Kristen's answer and the superintendent I was talking with is it can be as expansive as you want it to be. So you can use a switch as a full rebranding and naming of your focus and all that, or it can be, hey, we combined our two schools, we're a charter now. Here's the difference that makes, primarily transportation.
Combining which two schools?
So the elementary, the one requirement is that the elementary and the secondary have to become a single school.
I got you. Okay,
Yep.
cool. I thought you were talking, we were gonna be part of Siuslaw
No,
or
no,
Triangle
no.
Lake. I'm like, nobody told me about that.
No, we should definitely not talk about that.
Okay, let's not. Okay,
So, I mean, it sounds like the next step is to somehow um, make known to the community, right, of the possibility of thinking of this and have feedback from that.
One more thing, I just want to say one thing. I have to go to another meeting here in like 2 minutes, but I just, okay, so like my family, like the Beers family has been pretty anti-charter school, like for generations. And so Michelle, like, like, I'm also kind of one of those people. It's just like very, I don't know, like, what is the word? Like stand on things on principle. Like, so like we have a responsibility to public school, like structure and stuff like really resonates with me. But when I was like approached about like considering charter school, even conversations for Mapleton, and just let people, in my one of the, I was just reminded very like lovingly and gently that like my role on the board is like to do what's best for the students, and so like it was
Right here.
a gentle reminder that my like
Behind the gas.
I don't have to give up my principles,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah, the home gas.
it's just
Oh,
I was there for 25
my
years.
my
Still
responsibility or my feelings or my responsibility to like public school it doesn't get to like
Rich guy.
supersede my responsibility or my feelings towards the students and what's best for the district. And so at least that like just kind of helped me like put a little bit of that aside so that I could be a little bit more just open and less biased is actually what the word I'm looking for. I was just less biased to it, so I could just be
Salmon Festival and Crawdad
less biased when I come to like making the decision. Just because you were even more involved, with like you went down and even researched becoming chartered with superintendent whoever you said, and so of course I wasn't that involved, but like I do what you're saying really does resonate, and so I just wanted to share kind of what helped me get out of that a little bit. So anyway, that's it. I do have to go. So I don't want to leave without you responding, but anyway, I just wanted to share that.
appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. And actually, that's number one, is that we are elected by the people of our district to do what's best for our district, which may or may not be coming with charter. So yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see you all at 10:30. Okay.
Everybody's got a PC in their back pocket.
Okay, so I guess I don't know how we decide the next, steps of informing.
Yeah, I was kind of ask, do people have input on what that community kind of share out looks like? Is it drafting something and sending it out? Is it making
I kind of feel like it sort of just needs to be something like that, like a document, and have some of those questions that they're all going to assume, which would be funding wise. I would say definitely teacher wise, what that looks like. I know that's a big question. That's still a concerning question in my mind. Some of those hot points of what we've already gotten answered, the seamlessness of it, whatever we feel like needs included on there, and then send that out. And then, that's going to be the best way. Spit it out to them, get the questions and concerns, and it might kind of direct where we go from there if we need to have like a meeting conversation with others or something.
is the request, like I was thinking the questions and concerns, do we want like are we at the point to say, are you in favor of this idea or not, or keep it more at questions and concerns so we hear that first and then do another round of kind of yes or no?
I don't know. Does anyone, Ms. Michelle, Abby, have a thought on that? Do we put that in there too? Like,
Yeah.
are you in
But-
favor of this or not, or do we wait and have a second round?
I mean, two things, like what we did, I think, Stu, you got some pretty good response to that last survey that you sent out about Veterans Day stuff, which I thought was really useful. And I would think something like a survey where we do include we include information that we've, gathered. And then we ask a bunch of questions but we provide people a space to put their narrative about it. And we also put in there, like, are you already in favor or against, kind of like, so that we're both providing, we're all providing.
In undecided also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Undecided. Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. We're putting that, so we're just kind of hitting all those spots. But I also wanted to say, I think maybe we should do a staff and a staff and student discussion at least at the same time, because everybody's always like, well, why did the community know before the staff did? Well, that's a good question. The staff's always like, or and the community is like, why are you all making this decision without us? Good question too. So kind of just thinking about the timing and making sure we're getting everybody's, providing information to everybody and getting input from everybody on a timeline that is useful to everybody.
And we're not in a rush here. We're talking. So, I mean, I would leave it open for a couple of school board meetings, invite people, tell them that we are discussing it, and it's, allow people to come. We could do a separate meeting like we have done in the past where we convene the community and it's not a school board meeting and it's just about the charter, which I think honestly, out of respect to everybody, is probably a good thing to include. It's extra work for us, but I think it's a good thing to include because it's very transparent. They're not held to the 3 minutes. It's a school board meeting kind of thing. So I would include that.
And maybe schedule it after, if we do send out some sort of like survey data gathering, then we could schedule that after, because we could include results in that discussion, from people who couldn't attend the meeting.
Yeah. I think having a meeting that allows staff and students to show up, so like an evening meeting is a better idea than a workday meeting.
Yeah.
I do have a question. I mean, that's more workload. We're already trying to get a lot of public engagement around other, like necessary things. And that's outreach and engagement is a hugely time consuming thing. So definitely a question about schedule for that, like I don't want to put that on Sue, you or other district employees now, if that's not, if that really isn't possible, or if it's going to negatively impact efforts that are going on otherwise, already.
Yeah, I mean, it's doable. We kind of I don't know, like I think this came up at the last meeting where it's like, if we're gonna decide this, the lift isn't so giant that it couldn't be lifted by next year and do it, right? What I want to avoid, in all honesty, is to listen this spring and then make a decision that's a whole year away, because then people forget that there was process and that we that we listened and made that decision. It feels so removed. So I would rather it kind of move forward in the next month, we're getting towards the end of the year, 2 months max, and then make that, kind of make that decision so that it's timely and responsive to the feedback. And then kind of move from there. And if it's that, hey, we submitted all this, we're waiting for the response, it's not going to kick in this year, but the final year, but it's just something that we can report back out and say we either did it or didn't, kind of thing. So
yeah.
And I think there's probably a way for other engagements that we need. I mean, a lot of the lift was the integrated plan that we're submitting, so that's lessened a little bit. And then I think there is a way as people engage to kind of have an offshoot thing that says, "Hey, we love that you're here. Can you tell us these things too?" You know, and kind of strategically plan that to hear about more than just this, even though they're the main point of coming is you don't have to talk to us beyond this.
And somewhere in there, and maybe it's after those first few things, like the student staff meeting and or the survey, but I do think then we have to send out a mailer, like taxpayer wise, you know, like I think that's, you don't want to be hit, like I think a mass mailer informing the entire community, not just the ones we normally get to connect with, but I think being blindsided like that, where there's like, oh, that's where my dollars are going to, and I don't even know what this is. I think we can't forget to do that as soon as we maybe do these first communications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea. And I think actually what do you think of the hosted meeting being post mailer?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think do this like survey and or student staff thing. Then you can take from that feedback, send out the mailer, and then that way, you know,
Yeah.
taxpayers, that anyone who doesn't normally be a part of these things or just isn't normally naturally in our system of it, they get a chance to come in and discuss. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll probably steal heavily from her slides to make a kind of one pager, and then and we can share her slides as well in what we send out, but try to put a one pager quickly together and kind of bounce that stuff back to you guys, and then be ready to get that at least to students and staff first, and then put together a survey with that one pager. Try to get that turned around pretty quick.
Isn't that heavily weighted though? Isn't her perception or her slides or do they show the full panoply of ideas around?
I'd say it's more process or sorry, Annie, I cut you off.
No, you're right. Go ahead. You're saying it kind of just
more process oriented and just the facts.
Oh.
I don't see her as a sales pitch either way. Like, I think we asked questions, she presented answers, and it's just kind of saying, hey, here's what a single district charter is, and what it can allow, and here's the process to, if you were to pursue that, here's the process.
Gotcha. All right.
And I think Annie, can you resend that that presentation out?
Yeah, I'll do it. So it's at top of your list there.
Yeah, and then if there's anything in there that that feels biased and or missing, then we can pull from somewhere else. It doesn't have to be just that. So
okay. All right. So is everyone good? Will Jaren do we just use the same link again? What do we do? Okay. We can do that. And then, okay, perfect. Thank you.
And just really fast forward, Jaren, I hopefully you would chime in if you had serious like considerations or concerns about like the financial part of it. So I don't know that you do. I just wanted to make sure I put that in there because I know you're listening, and I think you would just chime in if you did, but in case not, we definitely want to hear anything you got, but not right now necessarily. That could be later or when we come back, but. Yeah, that'd be awesome to just reach out to that community about it. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And Jaren, you're ending the recording part.
I mean, next is executive, right? So
I think that part's like an executive session type thing, right? So we might have to, Andrea, can you just name real quick what it is so that anybody watching knows why it's going to executive session, and then you can turn that off.
Yeah, so then when we come back, we'll do the executive session of superintendent evaluation.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm jumping off for a bit.
Annie, just I'm not on this. I'm leaving. Okay, good.
Correct, Mizu, Michelle,
That's
am I right? She's
Yeah.
not here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, correct.
I go away. Okay, thank you. And thank you all. I'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.